number of troops, about 10,000, will soon head to the Middle East. So what's the end game here? Jerrod Labor from Young Boys is back here and up late with me on the Final Five. All right, Jerrod, so first of all, we know Iran has been a thorn in the U.S. side for a long time, whether it was Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, now it's Hassan Rouhani. What is the end game here? I mean, they're going to send the troops over. What are we looking to accomplish?
Well, I think we should be clear first that this is a report of a proposal that the Pentagon is going to put in front of the White House. So it's not necessarily a done deal at this point. But the end game has, it's been the same pretty much throughout the entirety of the Trump administration. They want regime change in Iran. They don't like the Ayatollahs. They don't like the idea that there is this power, this regional power in the Middle East that is predicated, that was founded and is predicated on explicitly sort of anti-Western and anti-American interference in the region. And and then there's other things. The administration believes that Iran poses a greater threat than they actually do. And so there's this sense that we just can't coexist anymore with the current Iranian regime, with the Ayatollahs, which is sort of belied by a 40-year history of coexistence. But it seems to be John Bolton is doing his darndest to make it sort of come to a head.
And I'm glad you mentioned John Bolton's name, because that's a guy whose name has come up. I mean, from day one, you realized what his mindset was, the role he played in going to war with Iraq. But the difference this time seems that you have a good number of people on both sides of the aisle who don't want to see war with Iran. Nobody wants to see war, period, but the powers that be. Is this a situation where there's political resistance, or is this just all about trying to take precautions?
Well, this is honestly like a crisis of personnel. We don't have we have an acting chief of staff. We don't have a real chief of staff. Mick Mulvaney is acting chief of staff. We don't have a defense secretary. Secretary Shanahan is acting secretary. The State Department, the diplomatic corps of the State Department has been sort of gutted from the beginning. And the president is more interested in yelling on Twitter and watching Fox News than actually being president.
Hey, be careful.
But so it's like a crisis. So John Bolton is sort of, normally with like a chief of staff, there would be policy procedures and things in place. But John Bolton has been given kind of free rein as national security advisor, which is a position that's not confirmed by the Senate. So he faces very little political pressure in the White House, and he's sort of getting carte blanche to do what he wants, it seems.
Jerrod, you mentioned Shanahan, and he has been. I know the president has signaled his willingness to put him up for confirmation as permanent defense secretary. What do we know about him in terms of his mindset? Is he a guy who would take this job, but still you would have the shots called by somebody like a John Bolton? Or, we don't know a whole lot about him other than the fact that he came from the defense sector.
Yeah, I think the shots would still come from within the White House and the president's advisors and his staff. I mean, Shanahan, for lack of a better term, right now seems to be an empty suit. You say he comes from the defense industry. I believe he came from, it's either Boeing or Lockheed Martin, one of the two. I can't remember specifically. It's clear he's one of these corporate appointees that seems to be a trend in the Trump administration. So I'm not convinced, even if he did become sort of the permanent defense secretary, that there would be a significant change.
Is this something that people should go to bed tonight worried about, that we're going to go to war with Iran, or is this still a matter of letting the chips fall where they may, and just a matter of a lot of saber rattling on one side or the other?
I think it's becoming more and more. I think we should be more and more worried about it. We have, and the last several years, we have antagonized the Iranian regime to no end. We scrapped the nuclear deal. We've put, we put sanctions on them. We've, put their economy in a chokehold. And we declared their elite security force a terrorist organization. We're involved in 2 proxy wars against them in Yemen and in Syria. You can only push against a regime, you can only push them into a corner for so long before they start to push back. So I think it's something to be increasingly worried about, particularly with this new report that they want to send 10,000, that somebody in the Pentagon or maybe Bolton wants to send 10,000 more troops as a buffer specifically against Iran.
Well, we're going to be following this one for sure. Jerrod Labor, good to see you tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Back after this in the Final Five.